Okay, good afternoon everyone. So this is our second vlog of the series that we're going to be doing throughout the module Philosophy to Practice on our Masters. Just a bit of an intro. So the key outcomes we've got for this vlog or discussion, we're going to look at how reflection, how it aids our coaching practice and just the coaching process as a whole, and also how it enhances us as coaches, and we're going to refer a bit to our own coaching practice. So just to get us kicked off, really, for you two and to me as well, how would you define reflection from your own knowledge and just what it means to you?
So from my own knowledge, I'd say reflection is looking at the work you've done. Say if you've done like work, or say if you've done coaching, looking at what you've done and taking the good points, and obviously then taking what can be improved.
Yeah.
And then looking at more in depth on how you can improve it for next time, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the exact same. So obviously, for me, it's maybe not necessarily just did the session go well. It's maybe did the drill work? How did I go about saying it?
Yeah.
If people didn't understand it, why did they not understand it? Was it too complicated, or was it my explanation? So it's looking at the whole process of you, the players, the environment, and then the session itself.
Yeah. I think for me, so it's kind of similar to what you guys said, but I think from an experience side of things, so I feel like when I've experienced something, it turns it into knowledge sometimes. So if I'm doing a coaching session like you guys just said, if I'm behaving in a way, I want to see that as a good way. Like if I'm running a session and the players aren't engaged, for example, I need to know why. And obviously for a coaching session in the future, that'd be something you'd reflect on. It'd be, you'd turn that into more of an experience and gain knowledge from that. Yeah. Any other points on that, or?
I think for me, it's not about reflecting on just your coaching.
Yeah.
You've got to reflect on. You reflect automatically on everything you do.
Yeah.
So whenever you've done anything in life, you usually reflect on the decisions and the actions and the outcomes.
Yeah.
I think to be really good at it, you've actually got to sit down and go through processes of really picking apart what you've done and why you've done it. Because obviously, as much as coaches, we're trying to make people better, we can get better as well. It's not we know everything, but we can always improve.
Yeah. Good point. I think with like regards to timescale as well, for you two, in your opinions, would you say immediately after your coaching is more beneficial for the reflective process, or would you say leaving it maybe a few hours, few days, and then referring back to it? So would you say it's an immediate process, or is it can be longer, or?
It depends really. Each of them have their own benefits. I mean, doing it immediately, you're more likely to remember more.
Yeah.
But you might view it differently in a week's time. You might think about it differently, because if you review it immediately, you might think, "Oh, that was really good."
Yeah.
But then, if you look back at it in a week's time, you might think, "Actually, no, that wasn't that good. What can I do to improve that?"
Yeah.
I think you've got to do all of them. So I know.
Yeah, definitely.
The experience myself recently was I was in a school and I was doing my second ever indoor teaching session. So I was actually teaching kids classroom-based stuff, and I did something on the whiteboard, which the second I was writing it, I was like, actually, I've done this the wrong way. I should have done it this part first, followed by that part. So sometimes it happens instantly.
Yeah.
And other times, obviously, you sit back and you might be having a brew later on that night and go, oh, that's what I should have done.
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, I think immediately after is quite a big thing, because it's kind of still in your thought process. So Cushion's actually looked quite a lot on it, Cushion 2017, just with reflecting immediately after. So if it's immediate, straight in your thought process after the session, it's fresh in your mind, if you like. So you've got a really, really good knowledge of what happened. So I've done some sessions like last Saturday when I was coaching at the soccer centre, yesterday. I did a session and I thought that the players, one or two of them lacked engagement. And I thought, was that due to my behaviours, or was it due to the environment? Because it was quite bad weather, so if it was windy, it could have been I just wanted to run about to keep warm. So immediately after, I thought to myself, was it that, or was it my behaviour?
So I've got something here from Alison Newby, 2018.
Yeah.
he says that reflective practice is systematic, critical, and
Planned.
creative thinking.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of that?
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think, and it also aids a bit of professional development, because if you continue to reflect, as I mentioned with Cushion 2017, you're saying that if you continue to reflect, it's going to increase experience, make you maybe arguably more of an experienced coach and more of a professional person, because you're kind of aiming to get better in your coaching practice, really. So, but Martin's as well. Back on that definition that you said, Martin's 1997. He states experienced coaches transform experience into knowledge through a process known as reflection. So, as I mentioned at the start, it kind of is turning experience into knowledge. Yeah.
And I've got like a brief definition of what Thompson and Pascal think reflection is. And they say, taken literally, reflective refers to thinking about our work either during or after.
Yeah.
This can be what went well and what needs improving, etc. They also said Thompson and Pascal as well, 2012, reflective practice can be summarised into three main headings: the critique of the technical rationality, the artistry of the professional practice, and the reflective learning.
Yeah. It's all different definitions, because I think as well with what I mentioned before, that's a good point. What I mentioned before about when you turn experience into knowledge, I think like when I said experienced coaches reflect a lot, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's just got to be experienced coaches, because I think maybe coaches that have just done the level 1 that have only been coaching a few months, they'd gain some benefit to it. Would we agree?
Oh yeah, everyone.
Yeah.
Not even everyone is getting benefit from reflecting, really.
Yeah.
Even in everyday life, not just coaching.
That's absolutely, like, it's not just relevant to coaching, is it? Maybe if you had a job interview, it goes back to the impression management thing. If you had a job interview with someone, just a social environment, you'd reflect on the way you behaved around them. You'd be like, oh, was I dressed smart enough? I don't know. Was my communication good? Yeah.
Talking about that, Thompson and Pascal, using the same article
You
again.
love that Thompson, don't you?
Yeah, it's a good article that. They talk about reflexivity, which is what you've just talked about there.
Yeah.
Can be simply defined as recognising our own influence and and the influence of our social and cultural context on the type of knowledge we create.
Yeah.
And the way we create it, reflexivity is the key to making our reflections critical.
Yeah. And it kind of makes like the jigsaw, if you like, because that's a kind of a good way of putting it, because it helps you understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. So rather than just coaching, you kind of understanding the actual coaching process. So, were my behaviours good as a coach? Like communication, was my body language? Did I use effective demonstrations? So you're kind of underpinning why you're coaching in a way.
Yeah, I've got here that it's paying critical attention to practical values and theories that inform everyday actions. So you said it's like body language, it's the tone of voice, the pitch of voice, the way you put it across, the way you stand.
Yeah.
It's everything which then will help, obviously, when reflecting back. Because if I'm saying, I didn't know why my players are getting involved in a session, I'm stood there sort of arms crossed and with a frown on my face.
Yeah.
If I'm not projecting that energy, the participants aren't going to get that excitement, that enthusiasm from me. And then we bounce back to reflecting, going back on it.
I think that's everything when you're coaching. You need to look like and behave like you want to be there, so that the players want to be there. Because if you're, like you said, just standing there with your arms crossed, just looking around, not getting involved, they're not going to be engaged. So.
Yeah, definitely. I think it is a big part of our coaching, but I think one thing is the peers, the peers or maybe colleagues or coaches you're coaching with, they also play a big role in reflection, because feedback, that's been mentioned quite a lot, and the whole debriefing concept. So Carson et al. 2008, they supported it a bit. So it's not just the person that's coaching that actually reflects other people. So if I did a coaching session now, you guys were in the room watching me, you guys could reflect on me reflecting in a way.
I think that's a really big one because obviously I may have mentioned about George Ford, the rugby player. He said, obviously, I probably quoted this last week, but he said a player feels what a coach can't.
Yeah.
A coach sees what a player can't.
Yeah, definitely.
It comes back to it. Obviously, if I'm trying to put loads of enthusiasm in this really difficult session, and my players just aren't understanding it, the best people to tell me they don't understand it are the players.
Absolutely.
And it's getting their feedback to then coming back to you. But then it's maybe not just your players. I know a lot of people have mentors, other people who are maybe at a higher level, or even just someone on the sideline who just stands and watches you and the way you act.
Yeah.
It's building, it's a gathering of information of how you do it, which obviously boosts your reflection process.
I think there's different types of reflection you can use. So we've got the whole video reflection idea where, like, it's kind of like we're doing now. So we're videoing ourselves, and obviously we can look back on this and look at our behaviours. But from a coaching point of view, if you actually video yourself, it's something I'm thinking of doing actually. So maybe hiring out a GoPro, wearing it, maybe looking like a bit of an idiot wearing it, like, but just walking around with the GoPro and just having it on and actually filming and observing your coaching behaviours. And it's been quite a big thing in performance analysis at the moment.
I know my one worry about the videoing your own sessions and coming back comes back to that impression management.
Yeah, definitely.
Do I change because I'm on camera?
Yeah.
Probably so, because I'm thinking about.
That's a good point.
I'm on camera, so I'm constantly thinking about coaching. Well, I think sometimes asking the players on a random session on the spot at the end, just going, what do you think of my coaching, sort of takes away a lot of that pressure of someone.
Because it's like a social expectation, isn't it, in a way?
Well, it's just trying to take that, as we said, impression management away from it. We're trying to take the pressure of you thinking about what you've got to do and just sort of going, right, that's a job, do it. Now reflect on how you actually are and not how you're trying to act.
Because it's funny, like, how our behaviours actually change when we're coaching. If there's someone there that you feel is higher up than you, your behaviours, it's kind of like a fact. You just know it's natural. You're naturally human to just change your behaviours in a way.
Right.
It's like a pressure.
It's said that you're not really your natural self unless you're at home by yourself.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm very different. I'm quite open about it. Obviously, being as a young rugby player at university, I'm very loud, very confident.
Yeah.
Go out and do all the stupid challenges and all stuff like that. But the second I cross that white line or onto the grass or onto the court, it's strict professionalism. It's let's get the job done.
Yeah, definitely.
And the second the session's over, I've blown that final whistle. Yeah, feel free to let's go into the bar afterwards and have a laugh. But when I cross that line, you've got to be switched on. And I know some people find that really difficult because it does go from one end of the spectrum to the other.
Yeah.
Something I've reflected on in my time coaching, people do find hard.
Yeah.
Because obviously you build up relationships with these people, and sometimes they struggle to find the boundary between the line. But then it's my job to try and put the boundary there, and then vice versa. Sometimes I've struggled to find the line. And I've needed someone to reflect on it and go, actually, Malcolm, you need to separate this line better and really push over it. So, and that's definitely how it's affected me. Yeah. And that's how it's pushed me. Because obviously, I coached under 18s for years, so there's only 3 years difference between me and some of the boys. I'm the same age as half of the siblings. Yeah. So they found it really weird, sort of just looking at me as like an older brother or your brother's best friend, and not actually it's Coach Matt who's here to make me a better player.
Yeah, I think to maybe get a bit of a structure for my reflection sometimes as well, I've followed, you've both probably heard of it, the Gibbs cycle. Gibbs 1988, I think it is. So it's a cycle based on, you've got, I think it's 8 different stages that you follow, and the first one's obviously describing the situation within your reflection. So to understand, to start you off having a foundation of reflection, you need to know what's happened to start. So that's a big important thing, and that's something I plan on following in the future with my reflection. But again, it's kind of easier said than done in a way.
So it is. It's description, feelings, evaluation, analysis, conclusion, and then your action plan to go forth.
So the analysis from a coaching point of view, it's important because it's the why and the how. Yeah. So rather than just saying, oh, my coaching behaviours weren't great, it's understanding why.
I think a lot of it is the same. What were you thinking at the time? It goes back to this values and beliefs.
Thoughts and feelings.
So
Yeah.
if I believe in this session, this is what happens, and then actually I go away tomorrow and I've watched a video of the coaching session who's done it completely different to me, I'm like, why have I not thought about that? So I think thoughts and feelings and your values and beliefs, definitely you reflect on them in your coaching sessions a lot. Which obviously links back to last week's video as well.
Is reflection something you did before uni, would you say?
Subconsciously, and maybe not to the level that I do now. So obviously going up the coaching routes and through being at uni and it really being something that's absolutely key to your coaching, I sort of sit down and I take a little bit more time with it. But like I said, when I first started coaching, it was sort of like you might say something or do a bit and you think, why are they not? Why is it just not clicking tonight? What is going wrong? And you reflect on it briefly in the car on the way home, or in the change rooms afterwards, but you don't actually sit down and go, this is what happened, this is why. And then the key one, the action plan. What am I going to do different next week? I think that's a real key one. If you want to improve, it's all good being all this reflective coach and thinking about what you're going to do. If you've got no action plan to go forward the week after or the next day or that next hour, it's pointless because it's just you're missing out the key bit, of course, in that action plan.
I feel like going back to when I said what's the best time scale to reflect, I think going back now, I think immediately after for me, as I mentioned, is the most beneficial for me understanding what went well, what didn't. And looking back, Gilbert and Trudel, they've supported that quite a lot because with it being a fresh in your thought process, you've got almost the best knowledge of what happened in the session. So, and again, it goes back to Gibbs's cycle because you've got a very strong knowledge of describing what happened. Because if it was only 2 minutes ago, then obviously it's fresh.
I think sometimes the key things in a session stand out with you. As well, and they're probably when you go back to it like 2 days later or a week later, it's reflecting on the key things that happened in the session because you know what the key things are. So for me, I might have had a bit of a punch up between two of the lads. And then I need to reflect on why has that happened. And actually, it was because my session was maybe too aggressively driven. I was trying to achieve an aggressive outcome, and I went too aggressive with my session, and that's created a little bit of an outflow. Is it something that's actually happened at school because the best mates and something's happened, which then becomes an external factor which I can't do anything about? I've got to try and manage in my sessions, and that's what makes it really hard for us coaches. Like going to clubs and work outside of grassroots levels. There's lots of external factors. You know, little Jimmy might come to you and mum and dad might just have been divorced or something like that, and there's then factors which we can't eliminate, but we have to manage.
It's quite a complex process and it's time consuming. Like you said, there's external factors, so even if it's just work commitments, but in education now for us it's a massive thing, reflective practice. And obviously to be a reflective practitioner you've got to know the process of reflection, so
Well, I think that's why, like for tools like you said, you might video are important because I mean, can't remember the reference off the top of my head, but there's research suggests that coaches can only remember like up to 60%, and this is like top level coach can only remember up to 60% of what happened. So using like tools like videoing is really good, so you can reflect on the whole thing. And that can help you then manage those problems. So you might not remember, say a kid has a problem in a match. You might not notice it because you're watching the ball. If you watch it back on video, you might notice it after, which you can then reflect on, and you can go to that participant afterwards.
Well, there's hundreds of different types of reflective process. So there's also Borton in 1970. So his process is a little bit simpler. It's only 3 questions. It's what, so what, and what next. Which is obviously a lot simpler way. So maybe I'd say for me, starting out as a coach, subconsciously I was using Borton 1970. I was using that. What happened? What was the outcome? What's happening next?
There aren't actually many up-to-date processes on it really, because the only useful ones I've found are Gibbs's cycle, and it's very, very complex, and it is, I'm not going to lie, it is difficult to follow as a coach. Because it's not coach relevant, is it? It's just very generic. So if there was actually a coaching cycle that we could look into that was up to date and specific to sports coaching, then that.
1998 seems to be the newest one, and that was Brookfields. I'm just looking here. So Brookfields has 4 lenses. Has an autobiography as a learner, the learner's eyes, so seeing ourselves through our learner's eyes, our colleagues' experiences, and then theoretical literature. And that's the most up to date one, 1998. So could do more reading into that since it's a little bit new. It might be a little bit more up to date. And that's maybe definitely something we need to be reading into.
Yeah. Do you think we've covered everything? Anything else we want to go over?
Just that, basically, I would say failure is a part of it, but reflection is almost, you'd say, the best tool for learning.
Yeah.
Especially for a coach. I mean, I've got a couple here, like Knowles et al. 2007 suggests that reflective practice has emerged as a key skill that coaches use to enhance learning and increase the value of coaches' educational experiences. I mean, there's loads of research, and I've got like 2 or 3 more that say similar things. That reflection is one of the most, if not the most important tool for learning.
Yeah.
So,
definitely.
Just for reading a little bit more, reading this Brookfield, I think this is what we've just spoke about. So we reflect ourselves, then asking our participants to reflect on us. That's lens 2.
Yeah.
Having that external person watching you was lens 3. And then our literature is obviously reading up on what we do. Why is it we do what we do? You know, well, I've watched the video of Eddie Jones do that, or I've watched Mourinho do that, and that's probably going to help add a name to our practicing, which then helps us reflect on our processes.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you for listening, everyone. We'll hold it there, and we'll see you in our next blog or video discussion. So,
Anybody else?